Up to this point in our total training InDesign CS6 Essentials course, we've been working with smaller documents where a single file contains everything we need to produce a simple business card or brochure. But Adobe InDesign also has the capability to assemble long documents like catalogs, directories, and large proposals. This chapter explores how to break those long documents into smaller, bite-sized chunks and use Adobe InDesign to stitch those smaller documents into a large book, as well as how to generate long document tools like indexes and a master table of contents.
In this, the 7th chapter of our InDesign CS6 course, we're going to explore the many long documentation functions that are included with Adobe InDesign CS6 for formatting and assembling catalogs, directories, long business proposals. And we're going to do that by first creating a template that we're going to use for creating a sample course catalog for Total Training. So if you have your welcome screen open, as I do right here, click on the Create New Document button. If you don't, you can go to the File pull-down menu and select File, New, Document, or just use the keyboard shortcut Command-N if you're working on a Mac like we are in this chapter of our InDesign CS6 course, or if you're working on a PC, Control-N. Any of those will open up the New Document dialog box. Now, we don't know how many pages we're going to need yet, so we'll just leave it at 1. We want to make sure the intent is for print and that the Facing Pages checkbox is selected. The reason we want that selected is it allows us to design different layouts for the left and right pages of reader spreads while we're looking through our catalog. The default page size, of course, is letter. We're going to change that. We're going to make that smaller, so we're going to change that default from 8.5 to 3 3/4 or 3.75 inches across. We're also going to change the height from 11 inches down to 8.5 inches. That will allow us to create 2 pages side by side and be able to print them on a single 8.5 by 11 inch page. That's important when you're creating booklets like we're going to do at the very end of this chapter of our InDesign CS6 course. Now, the number of columns is 1, that's fine, but we're going to bring the margins closer together from 1/2 inch to 3/8 of an inch or 0.375 inches. So if your new document box looks like mine, the intent set for print, we're only creating a 1-page document with facing pages. The page size is custom, 3 3/4 inches across by 8.5 inches deep, and the margins are set for 3/8 of an inch all the way around. Click the OK button, and what we'll do is we'll create the file that will eventually be the template for our Total Training catalog. You'll know that right now because it'll have the name untitled and some number after that as we're working with it. Now, anytime we create an InDesign document, we're creating more than just a 1-page document. If I click on my Pages panel, I'll see that not only do I have page 1, but I have 2 master pages that are also created, one to the left and one to the right, so we can design those facing pages differently. I'm going to click on the right master page, just double click on it, and what that'll do is that'll bring me to where we want to work on this 2-page spread. Before I do anything, I'm going to lay down the guides that are going to make it easy for me to align the area where I'm going to set a page number at the top of the page, or what's commonly called a folio. I'm going to go set 3 horizontal guides, one at 3/8 of an inch, one at 3/4 of an inch, and then finally one at 1 inch. We do that by going into this horizontal ruler right here, holding the mouse button down. When you do that within the ruler, you see your cursor changes into double arrows. And I'm going to move my cursor outside of the page and drag that down to 3/8 of an inch. Now I know I hit that spot because it shows 0.375 in the little gray box just to the right of my cursor. It also shows that if we look at the control panel up above our document window. Now, I also want to make sure before I release the mouse button that my cursor actually is sitting outside of the page. If it's inside the page, it'll only create that guide for the page that it's on, and I'll get to do this twice. But if I put it outside of the page, it will place that horizontal guide on both pages of my InDesign document. So there's my one at 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to create another one at 3/4. I'll know it's there because I can see that in the gray box over by my cursor, as well as in the control panel. And I'm going to create one more that I'm going to place it exactly an inch. And I'll know when I get there because, again, I can see that in the control panel as well as the little gray box just to the right of my cursor. With that set, I now want to place 4 vertical guides at the edges of each of these columns. So I'm going to go over to this vertical ruler right here and hold the mouse button down. Now my double-headed cursor is left and right. I'm going to place one cursor right here to the left of the first column. Do the same here for the right. Now I'll go for the right-hand page, place a vertical guide to the left, and one to the right, just like so. Let's place some text on here so everybody will know that this section of our Total Training Catalog is for Adobe classes. I'm going to get my Type tool right here, click on that, and I'm going to draw a text frame from the upper left-hand corner of my right page down to the right and that 1-inch guide that we set right there. I'm going to type in Adobe Classes and go Command A since I'm working on a Mac. It would be Control A if you're working on a Windows PC. And we're going to change this font from Minion Pro to Times Italic. If you don't have Times, you can use Times New Roman Italic. Then we're going to change the type size from 12 points to 36 points, and the leading from that auto leading of 43.2 points to 36 points, or flat leading. If I click on this with my arrow tool, what I'll see is that that type's actually set as black. And I'm going to put a logo over the top of this, so I want this to be kind of ghosted to the back. The way I can do that, even though I have my selection tool or arrow tool selected, is to go to the swatches, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this brick red. Oops, I made a mistake there. I didn't want to do that for the frame. I want to change the color of the type. So I'm going to change that now back to what it was before with a fill of none, and then I'm going to click on the type right here. Click on this type button for the fill, and I'm going to make that red. And if you'll notice, what it does is it makes that a nice strong red to the background. Just a second ago I said though that this is going to be a ghosted background type, so I don't want it to be quite that strong. I'm going to go to my tint up here in the swatches, and I'm going to bring that down from 100% down to 25%. When I do that, it's kind of a light ghosted image that sits to the background. Now I haven't done a lot of work to this, but I don't want to do it all over again. I'm going to copy this and put it on the left side by clicking in the text frame and holding the mouse button down. When I start dragging it, I'm going to hold down the Alt key on a Windows PC, or Option if I'm working on the Mac, as well as the Shift key to create a second copy of that logo. Now I have one set to the left, and I have one set to the right pages. But if I look at the type for both of these are actually set to the left. On the left-hand page, I want to move that type a little closer to the gutter. So with that selected, just like so, I'm going to go to my Paragraphs panel, and I'll just click the alignment to the right. As long as I'm not changing type, a number of the type attributes that I can apply as I'm working with type can be done with the selection tool and the text frame selected, as well as they can be done for the type tool being selected and highlighting that type. Now I've placed the type I want on each of those facing pages here in my master pages. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place a Total Training logo. I want to make sure that nothing's selected, and I'm going to go Command D if you're working on a Mac like I am here, or Control D if you're working on the Windows PC. And I'm going to open or place the file that's called Total Training CMYK Outline.eps. When I double click on that, I'll see my cursor's changed into a place gun, and I have that little Total Training logo. So I'm going to click on that just like so, and I can see that I have my Total Training logo. It looks good, but it's a little bit large for what I want to do. Now I'm going to make it just about 3/10 of an inch tall. So with that 4/10 down to 3/10, I need to scale it. I'm going to go right down here beneath the scissors tool, and I'm going to select the scale tool. Now you might have one of these other ones selected, but in my case what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this scale tool, and when I select it, I'm going to put my cursor in the middle of this, and I'm going to hold down my Option key if I'm on the Mac, Alt key if I'm working on a PC, and click. And when I do, I'll take that and I'll make it 75% of its original size. I'm going to say OK, and there's my smaller logo. I want to line up the bottom of this type where it says Total Training at the exact same place that it says Adobe Classes at the bottom of that type. So I'm going to move it up to about roughly right there. And then I'm going to zoom in close, 400% size by using the keyboard shortcut Command 4. Working on a Mac, if you're on a Windows PC, we'll want to take that and you'll make it Control 4. And I'm going to use my cursor keys, the arrow keys that sit between the typewriter and the calculator side on a standard desktop keyboard. They might be located a little bit differently if you're working on a laptop computer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that cursor to bump the text up and to the right so that the end of the G area and the end of the S in Adobe Classes line up at about the same point. That looks perfectly good. Now, if you are not seeing the magenta margin and violet column guides like I have on screen, you may need to go into your preferences and uncheck Guides and Back under Guides and Pasteboard. I'm going to take that now and I'm going to place that on the other side right here by taking my arrow tool, again holding the mouse button down away from that area where I see the target, and then dragging it to the right, holding down the Alt key if I'm on a Windows PC or Option key on the Mac to create a second one, and then a Shift key that allows me to line that up perfectly straight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my little guy right there for the Total Training to line up with it. I'm going to go Command 0, Control 0 to go back into Fit and Window View, and I can see I've got those logos on both sides of my A master pages.